Hello and welcome to this short podcast called How to Get Away with Murder, or alternately, How to Catch and Convict Somebody Who is Guilty of Murder. My name is Dr. Michael Fay, my dog is prancing around somewhere in the background, and we're going to talk about the aspects of murder that you need to prove in order to secure a conviction of whomever you think is guilty of the murder at Kiel. Over the next few minutes, what we're going to talk about is the elements and the parts of a murder case. We're going to talk about what you need to prove and what you need to prove legally beyond all reasonable doubt to a jury in order to convict your particular felon. But before we talk about the elements of murder and the things you need to prove, let's actually have a look and think about what we mean by murder. Now, most of you will immediately say, well, murder is killing somebody. And that's true. But not all deaths that happen will be murder. Somebody who is accidentally killed by a driver who's speeding may be a crime, but it's not necessarily murder. Now, murder is the unlawful killing of an individual with the intention to kill them or the intention to cause really serious harm, so that death is virtually certain. Now, what that breaks down to in law terms is two elements. And when we're trying to prove that somebody is guilty of murder, as was widely across the news recently with the trial of the police officer in America for the murder of George Floyd, what we're trying to prove are two elements. We're trying to prove an actus reus, which is Latin for guilty act, and we're trying to prove mens rea, which is Latin for guilty mind. Most crimes have these two elements: the guilty act, the doing of something that is wrong, and the guilty mind, the intention or recklessness to do something wrong. Now, when we're talking about murder, murder is a crime of what we call specific intent. Murder requires you to have the intention to kill or to cause really serious harm so that you can appreciate that death is virtually certain. So while I might not set out to kill somebody if I batter them around the head with a baseball bat or a croquet mallet or anything else that's a blunt object, then while I might not intend to kill them, I might appreciate that the serious head injuries I have inflicted are likely to actually result in their death. So it's the intention to cause really serious harm or death itself. Now, in order to prove that somebody is guilty of murder, first you have to prove that there is a death. Somebody has been killed. So we need to establish the facts that suggest that this person indeed did kill somebody, our victim. We need to establish that whomever you think is the guilty party murdered our victim. So we have to be able to prove that there was the wrongful act. We have to be able to say that, well, this happened. Once we've established that, we have to look at the individual and prove that that person intended that outcome. Now, one thing to be mindful of and to be clear about is lawyers are not interested in motive. Motive is very exciting, it's full of answering of questions, and it's the why someone wanted to kill an individual. Was it because there was finances involved? Was it because of a relationship or an affair? Was it something dramatic that's played out on television and in movies many, many times? The subject of an Agatha Christie novel. There are many, many sequences in many TV shows where the detective triumphantly tells everybody why the person did it. But we're not interested in that when we're trying to convict somebody. Why they did it is really incidental to us. It's nice to know why they did it because it gives us as human beings the answer and satisfies our need to know why somebody did something awful, but it doesn't necessarily help us as lawyers. What we want to improve is intention. So when we've got the idea, when we've been able to prove that yes, there was a murder and yes, this person did that act, we can show that there's fingerprints or there's some kind of evidence on the weapon that tells us that person A did indeed kill person B. We now need to prove that they have the intention to do that. And this is the crucial bit about murder. If we can link somebody to a death, that's fine. We've got a death. Now we need to prove that they intended to kill. So we have to show that there was intention to bring about somebody's death or that death was a virtual certainty of the harm that was caused. So if I take a brick and I hit you over the head with it multiple times, then we have to prove that even though I didn't intend to kill you, it was virtually certain that stoving your head in with a brick would leave you dead. Now, death or serious bodily harm must be a virtual certainty of the defendant's actions. So whoever we think is guilty here, what they do, it must be virtually certain that what they did would lead to somebody's death. And the defendant must appreciate that that was actually the case. So they must appreciate that by hitting somebody around the head with a brick, they would die. Now that's really important, because in cases before the court, sometimes people have gone, well, I didn't know that was going to happen, and they've got away with it. So you really need to be careful in the evidence that you use to prove beyond all reasonable doubt that the person you think is guilty, that your defendant, knew it was virtually certain that death would occur. And when we're thinking about intention, it's a pretty straightforward idea. If Homer here is pointing a gun at me, pulls the trigger and shoots me through the head, we can probably demonstrate from his actions, pointing the gun, pulling the trigger, shooting me in the most lethal position, in a fatal kind of point, is intention. Because we can't see inside somebody's head. We can't say, yes, our defendant thought this, unless, obviously, you've got some proof like a journal or something, which may show some level of intention. But what we're interested in is the acts that they did and the way that they presented at the time of the crime. So if Homer's holding this gun and shoots me through the head, we can say, well, he knew what a gun was, he knew what would happen, and he knew shooting me through the head would virtually certainly kill me. So we now have, from his actions, evidence of his intention to kill. If we were dealing with somebody who was 3 years old, who pointed a gun at me and shot me, we could say, well, the 3-year-old wouldn't appreciate that it was virtually certain he would kill me if he shot me with a gun. So you need to look carefully at the acts and the way that the defendant behaved at the time of the crime. Did they push someone in front of a train? Did they hit someone around the head with a brick? Did they shoot them? These kind of things will show you whether or not somebody intended to cause harm. And sometimes that's really kind of crucial, and that's the part that gets the person convicted. So you need to be able to prove that your defendant, your person who you think is guilty and that you want to convict, had the intention to commit the murder that you're currently investigating. Gather your evidence, prepare it well, and consider how you might use it to prove the intention to kill. Good luck, have fun, and most of all, stay out of the crosshairs.